Today we're going to talk about the French and Indian War. Now, you might find it a little confusing. You can take an entire semester in college on just the French and Indian War, so it's something that we're going to do pretty quickly, but you might have a little trouble following, and that's okay. We watched the video in class on it, so hopefully you have some visual of when we're talking about some of these people and we're talking about the type of fighting, you can kind of picture that. So our big question is, what was the impact on the colonies of the French and Indian War, including how the war led to an overhaul of British policy from 1763 to 1765? So that sounds like a lot, but what we're basically trying to figure out is, how did the French and Indian War change the colonists from feeling as though they were full British citizens to resenting some of the policies that Britain puts in place with them? So remember, there are 4 European countries in America. We've added a few since the last time we talked about this, the newest one being Russia. Russia has now claimed present-day Alaska and Canada. Parts of Canada, not all of it. Spain still controls down in the south in Mexico, Texas. They also now control California and Florida. France, again, still up in Canada, and they also claim down in the Mississippi River Valley, so places like Louisiana. And Great Britain has the 13 colonies on the Atlantic coast. So here's the problem. The land just west of the British colonies on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, so the Ohio River Valley, was claimed by both the British and the French, so both of them say that it's theirs. But until the 1750s, the Native Americans who lived there still controlled the land. So the British and French are both saying it's their land, but it's actually the Native Americans that are living on it. So as you can see, there's going to be an issue when you have 3 people trying to go for the same area. So the French and English traders start to compete for the profitable fur trade in this area. So the Native Americans are running a fur trade. Both the French and the English want in on it. Since the 1700s, French fur trappers roamed the valley near the Ohio River for valuable mink, beaver, and otter. By 1740, English settlers crossed the mountains onto the Ohio River Valley to do the same thing. And so we can see here the French claims. The green is where the French claims their territory is, and they claim that the British territory is. And then we've got this claimed by both area. The British, however, if we look at the British a little bit later, the British are now saying that this is their territory, even though Spain has already said it's theirs. So there's a big dispute over who owns what. So we've got this struggle for control. So the area that we're really talking about is the Ohio River Valley. This is, and you notice this is the forks that they're talking about in the movie when they talk about the Fort Duquesne and the forks. France has Louisiana, they're also up here. If they can build forts going all the way down this river, they're going to control this whole section and block off the British. So this area right here becomes hugely contested. And so the Native Americans get put in kind of a bad spot. They have to pick sides. Control of the Ohio River Valley depended on the Native Americans who lived there. Their decision to support the British or the French was crucial in determining the outcome of the conflict. So the British actually, when it came to offering them money and goods to take their side, the British could offer them better goods. They had better weapons, better things to offer them. But what the British underestimated was that the French could offer them something more important. The French could offer them respect. And we saw that in the video with General Braddock. We saw that in other instances where the British did not understand Native American culture, and worse yet, didn't care to. So unlike the British, the French really tried to understand the Native American lifestyle. By the 1750s, the French had proven very successful in forming good relationships with most of the Native Americans, so they really have been able to befriend them and work with them. So the Iroquois League is really important. You might have learned about them in elementary school. They were a group made up of the 6 nations of Native Americans who lived in western New York. This was a powerful confederation, and they controlled the fur trade in the area of the Great Lakes. The Iroquois League would decide to support the British originally, so they think that the British have a better chance of winning. And you'll remember from the movie, it's the half-king that kind of makes this decision. So minor clashes in the Ohio Valley soon escalate into a war in America known as the French and Indian War. It was a small part of a larger war in Europe between France and Great Britain known as the 7 Years' War. So this war is big for the North American continent, but it's just one little piece of France and Britain being at war all over the world. In 1753, Virginia Governor Robert Dinwiddie sent 21-year-old George Washington to move the French out of the English territory, and we saw this part in the video. Washington and his men built Fort Necessity near Great Meadows, Pennsylvania. The French quickly surround the fort and force Washington to surrender. He and his men were later set free. This is pictures of Fort Necessity, so you can see it's a very, very rugged fort. So who fought in the French and Indian War? Well, there's a lot of people involved. On Great Britain's side, you have Great Britain, you have the Iroquois, so those 6 nations, and then the colonists. On France's side, you have obviously the French soldiers, you have other Native American groups, so those not belonging to the Iroquois, and you have Spain. So there's actually 2 countries on this side. So the result of this becomes the Albany Plan. In 1754, representatives or delegates from the 7 colonies met with the representatives of the Iroquois League to make sure that the Iroquois would support the British against the French. A general council would have the authority to raise taxes to support the military. In 1754, delegates from most of the northern colonies and representatives of the 6 nations met in Albany, New York. There they adopted a plan of union drafted by Ben Franklin of Pennsylvania. Under his plan, each colonial legislature would elect delegates to the American Continental Assembly to be presided over by a royal governor. This sounds like a bunch of just like words, but this is really important. This is the first time there's a formal unification of the colonies, and the first time that we see the colonies sending representatives to vote in their place. When the Albany Plan of Union was sent to the 13 colonies, none of them approved it. Remember, we saw this part in the video. They didn't want to be demanded to do things. They wanted to be asked. Each colony wanted to control its own taxes and make its own decisions. So there's an issue here, and if we think about it, why would Georgia, for example, want to pay taxes to fight a war in the Ohio Valley? It doesn't affect them. There's no direct threat to them. So a lot of the colonies felt like they shouldn't have to pay for a war that didn't involve them. And this becomes an issue heading into later historical periods in the U.S. because we really see the colonies buck against unification. They don't want to unify. They don't want to pay for something that doesn't involve them. So Washington and Braddock were sent to capture Fort Duquesne. I'll brush through this because we saw it in the movie. They were ambushed by the French and Native Americans, and by the 1758, the British were winning the major battle. So this is the turnover. If you remember, that was just a horrible, horrible defeat. We saw the British then realize that they were going to need to get the favor of the Native Americans, and so they really start to turn it around and learn to fight using North American tactics. So by 1758, the British are winning the major battles, and by 1759, the British gain control of Quebec and Montreal. The war officially ends in 1763 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. The treaty basically left France with no land in North America, so it completely kicks France out of North America. So under the Treaty of Paris, Great Britain gains New France, so all of Canada basically, the Ohio River Valley, that contested area, and all land east of the Mississippi. And they get Florida from Spain. So remember, Spain had chosen to support France in this war, and that ends up being a bad decision for them because it forces them to give up Florida to Britain. So let's take a look at what's going on. So Britain before 1763 has just these 13 colonies and a little bit of Canada up here. After 1763, Britain has all of this land. All right, all of this land. It's just a huge amount of land. Spain is over here before, but they actually gain some land in this. They gain over here in the Louisiana area. And the Native Americans are pushed down here, and there's a reserve down here that's still theirs, but they're basically left without their land too. And then, of course, we have everything up here still unexplored. And we will pick up with taxes and boycotts in our next lecture.